Good afternoon. Welcome back, everybody, after lunch. Hope you're all fed, you've had coffee. Thank you for coming back to the Improve and Innovate track. We've got Marc coming up in just a second. We've also got some great speakers this afternoon in Improve and Innovate. We've got Graham Smith talking after Marc about our growth team, and we've got James Bryant talking a bit later on about the story of Bitbucket pipelines. So please stay tuned to the track. Also for questions, please make sure you're asking questions via the mobile app. We should have some time for live Q&A with Marc after the session. Your question, and he can answer those questions. If you're not sure how to submit a question, because somebody did ask me that this morning, navigate to the agenda, click on this session, and then you should see a link that says submit a question. So on there, you can submit questions for Marc, and he'll take those afterwards. And you can also upvote other people's questions. So I'm sure you'll have lots and lots of things to ask him about mobile. So Marc is a design team lead in our mobile team. Many of you, when you were kids, I would guess, would have played with little toy cars. And you would have thought, man, that's really cool, these cool little toy cars. Well, Marc actually has the honor of designing a Hot Wheels toy car, which is pretty cool. Like, I'm actually a little bit jealous that he managed to do that. But now he's actually designing for us at Atlassian in our mobile team, and he's been on this journey with us on mobile, and he's going to talk you through how we designed and how we built Confluence and JIRA Mobile. So please welcome to the stage, Marc Reisen.
Thanks, Alistair. So just as Alistair had mentioned, thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to share with you a bit of our journey and just to talk about what it was like to bring our 12-year-old products into 5-inch screens. So one of the things that I just like to share is that we're in an unprecedented time for mobile. There's over 2 billion smart devices being used out there. These devices that we hold in our pocket have about 100 times the computing power than the original computer that got astronauts up to the moon. And so it's an incredible time to be designing into a new platform, and especially to be a part of the journey in bringing in JIRA and Confluence into a 5-inch screen. So as Alistair had mentioned, as much as I am a digital designer, previously I also was an automotive designer. I spent about 6 years working for Chrysler, mainly for Jeep, and then had an internship at Honda, spent some time working with Audi and Lamborghini in Italy. And I'd like to share that just because I think that it adds a very diverse element to not only designing for 2D and for web and for different platforms, but just how much of a shared design process and experience it is when creating something new and when innovating. So, on that topic, can anybody tell me what this car is? Just shout it out. This is the Honda Element. So my mentor, Eric Shoemaker, was the design manager of this project. And when I spent some time in Torrance, California, working with the Honda team, I got to learn a lot about their process and a lot about their creative process. And what was really interesting about this project is it started out as mainly a vehicle that was geared towards active and young people. So it was an active lifestyle. It's got rugged type aesthetics that kind of let you know that it can kind of take a beating and it can be something that you can use around in the city. And it has a really interesting package. So for those of you that are familiar with the creative process, this is probably what the mood board looked like for this vehicle. You've got young people playing in some canoes, you've got a cyclist photo, you've got somebody seizing the day and base jumping. And then you kind of have some product elements that are kind of square, they're kind of rugged. They've got really bright colors and different types of finishes that are coming together. And this would really kind of set the tone for when somebody would come in and see the proposals in the studio of what they'd kind of be getting into and what this vehicle was essentially inspired by. Can anybody tell me who ended up buying the Honda Element? Your grandfather. That's right. That's 100% correct. It was the baby boomers. So here's a vehicle that was clinicked. Here's a vehicle that spent weeks on end of going and meeting users and meeting future customers and showing them this vehicle and say, oh yeah, I've got my canoe, I totally use that thing. Yeah, I could see me and my buddies doing that. My girlfriend and I love to hike, we'd love to use this type of car. And at the end of the day, the target demographic that ended up purchasing the car was the boomer generation. Now the problem statement for the Honda Element when it first came out was two things. It was one, I'd really like a car that I can take my pet in, and I'd like to be able to then rinse out the car, which is why it had a rubberized material on the bottom of the car. The second was, I'd really like to be able to take my bicycle with me when I go cycling, and I'd like to just be able to wheel it in the back of the car. And that basically detailed the package of the vehicle. And I'm just going to say a reminder, the actual timer's not running. Is that okay? So that detailed the package of the vehicle. And that was because a lot of cyclists that were using their bicycles would drive to their destination and they'd load up a minivan because it was the best package for them to put all their bikes in. They could carry a bunch of people. And that was one of the problem statements that they started, or goal that they'd like to achieve for the vehicle. And for unknown reasons, the reason it appealed to the boomer generation was for very obvious things, but things that nobody touched on. One was egress. How easy is it to get in and out of the vehicle? The second was packaging. How easy is it to load things into the vehicle? It had a very low ride height, and it was very easy to kind of take things in and out of the vehicle during that time. And also, it didn't look dated. It was kind of cool. It was young. It was fresh. So the reason I'm talking about this, we're going to cover 3 main points. We're going to cover 3 things in this talk that we kept in mind when we were designing for mobile, and also just that we kept an open mind throughout the entire time. And I'll come back to this, but just that you really never know what the user and what the customers are going to say. And you can spend a lot of time in an automotive case, it's millions and millions of dollars on this hypothesis and this idea, and at the end you're going to learn something new. So it's really hard for users to articulate exactly what it is that they want. Now, if we stick with the automotive metaphor, and we talk about mobility, and we talk about transportation, and we talk about what it's like to release a minimum viable product, I like to use this slide as a representation because I'd like to dispel this myth in tech that you have to have a complete product before you actually release it out to your customers. So in the sense of automotive, if we wanted to build a car, we'd either work till releasing the car, or we'd offer an experience that would bring and solve the user's or customer's desires along the way. And that would kind of keep them happy because it could kind of be the path that they choose in order to get to their destination along the way. And so if we unpack what it would look like to build a car, it would look something like this. You'd start with a wheel, you'd move on to the chassis, eventually a powertrain, and then yay, you get the car, and that probably takes about 3 to 5 years today. But if we keep with the goal in mind that the user wants to be going places, that at the end of the day, it's all about getting to that destination, it's going to be painful. You're going to ride on a skateboard, hills kind of suck. You can choose a Razor scooter, better ergonomic experience, a little bit more stability, debatable on how cool you look on one of those. Bicycles, much better leverage, covering larger distances, motorcycles, so on and so forth. But it's important to recognize that each of these subsequent steps that build up to the car are painful, but we're still offering the experience that they get to go where they want. And yes, it takes longer time. Excuse me. So, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about 3 points that we used to constantly come back to and influence our product decisions, our prioritizations, and one of those is user data. So user data, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, but essentially it's just the analytics and metrics that are available on the product that's being used that help us track what kind of behaviors are happening. So that can come in the form of heat maps, behavioral patterns, monthly active users, and metrics. So if we stay for Confluence, when we looked at Confluence today, we broke it down into kind of 4 main priority or categories. And it was basically just an assessment of all the analytics and just saying, what are people doing when they're on Confluence? And the biggest thing that people were doing we classified as consumption, and that meant that they were reading pages. The second biggest thing was navigation, which meant that they're either browsing or searching or discovering the documents that they're looking for. And then we have create and we have edit. Now, when we looked at consume and navigate, we knew that our customers like to read stuff. And then when we saw create and edit, we knew, okay, you can't have consumption without creation, so one definitely precedes the other. But these are things that we're probably going to have to get to later. So that helped us prioritize for Confluence Mobile that we're going to start out with a companion app. That this isn't going to be a complete end-to-end experience on Confluence. We're not going to be able to have all the features placed into a 5-inch screen. But we're going to make sure that at the end of the day, what the overarching activity is on web, we're going to prioritize that for mobile. So that meant making it a companion app. So consumption, page views, that meant that search and communication or commenting on pages was equally as valuable because if they're viewing the page, they also like the ability to kind of communicate with other team members, and also search and find documents. And then the third is this feedback module. And that meant that we had to create a channel that the customers and users could reach back out to us and tell us what it is that they're experiencing and what it was that they wanted or what was missing within the experience. And we launched it. Now, as I mentioned, we started talking off about data. And data is very important, and data helped prioritize these decisions for us in mobile. But that only gave us the quantitative side. And that the qualitative side, which is more of the why and the understanding of how people were using the product or why they were using it or whether or not these types of pages were pages that they created, and those types of things were important. So as much as data was really, really important for us, I like to use the Star Trek Enterprise analogy here. So everybody familiar with data. So drives the ship, but not the captain. So there's a big difference between being data-informed and data-driven. And so we always like to come back to that to say, yes, we know that the data exists out there, but we really want to understand the why. And we were able to get the why by putting in a feedback module and allowing our users to experience bugs and experience issues within the product, and then reach back out to us and communicate that to us via email. So the second bullet point that allowed us to bring our mobile products out there relatively quickly was to go native. So that not only meant using features that exist on mobile, like notifications and things that exist on the platform, but it also meant using the native font stacks. How many here are Android users? Okay, so about 50%. How many here are iOS? Okay, so maybe about 40%, 60%. Okay, and anybody using other? Okay. So one of the things we wanted to prioritize from a user or customer perspective is that you pick the platform. So we don't want to change your native fonts. We don't want to change how you arrive at your settings. We want to adhere to that because you chose the platform, whether it's Android or iOS. And that's important. So the last thing was the feedback loop that I mentioned. So this is an example that just shows how we would capture feedback within our iOS experience. So this was a shake for feedback module. So somebody would be using and testing the app. The minute they experienced some type of bug, they would shake the device would screen capture, and then they could annotate it, and they could make comments, and they could send that, and we'd receive that on an email, and we could very quickly communicate back. And the feedback loop is important because feedback's always a gift whenever we're working within our products, especially in these early iterative stages. We actually sought it out, and it was extremely important to understand what customers wanted. So I just want to bring it back to some of the native components that we talked about. So commenting, notifications, and platform libraries were the three main areas that we were able to scale relatively quickly. We didn't have to make decisions on custom font stacks. We didn't have to make decisions on how commenting. Facebook and other products are out there doing that very, very well. So it allowed us to kind of scale and build this component library that we could then bring into all of our other mobile products. So for instance, we would go and build that on a platform level, and then we could share that into Confluence and JIRA, and then eventually into our future mobile products. Now, in the sake of JIRA, I mentioned for Confluence, we made it a companion app. For the sake of JIRA, we made a couple other decisions into how we wanted to prioritize those features. And the three main things that we came up with was an activity feed, the ability to create an issue, and a search. And for us, we knew that if we were able to achieve that on JIRA in mobile for cloud, that this would be an experience that at least people at the end of the day could see their issues, they could see their activity, and they could be able to track what was happening and what they needed to be a part of, and they could close that loop with their team. And we launched them. And then we user test. Now, the user testing is a really interesting experience. I mean, we get to hop in the room with our customers, new users. A lot of the times they're seeing these devices for the first time, or they're seeing this experience for the first time ever. And as a designer, or as a PM, or even as an engineer, when you're sitting in the room, you're hoping and praying that the customer is able to get to that end experience or that desired result. And you're kind of on pins and needles the whole time. And nothing beats the day until you start actually receiving the App Store ratings. And these are a few things that are actually live on App Store today, whether it's in Google Play or it's in the iOS App Store, that customers have actually said about our product. And not all of it was positive, and we knew that. As I mentioned before, we knew the process was going to be painful. We knew that we couldn't build that car and release it out there shiny and brand new right out the bat. We knew that we had to build up to it. But what this did, this helps us understand exactly what the customers wanted, exactly what they're deciding to share with us, and exactly how we could prioritize that. And we got some positive feedback. People were really cheering us on. I think that's why a lot of you are here today, is because we all are using our products, we all enjoy using our products, and we all get excited about these products. And the fact that everyone is here and able to share and talk about these experiences in order to build a better future is what we all get really excited about. And then there was also some more negative feedback, where people were explicitly calling out something that they were incapable of doing in our experience that we knew that we wanted to have in there, but we knew that we just couldn't get there in time. So that kind of brought us back to that even though we were being smart, it doesn't always equal smarter, that there's always a simpler solution, and that we don't have to add this complexity around how we execute on the experience, that we can always come back to these very simple instances that help us prioritize what we need to be working on and what we need to be pushing out in mobile. So this is what JIRA looks like today. We knew that through user testing, and we knew that through feedback, that mobile equals me, that there's a lot of context that's directed, but at the end of the day, it's, as we understood it, that the customers really wanted to be able to see what were the things that pertaining to them and how could they act on them quickly. So versus the kind of activity feed that we had before, which was more an aggregate of activity, we chose a more directed, this is a My Tasks screen. We kept it simple by making it simple line items and simple and easy to use, and then we continued to listen to our users. And we got to build richer and more beautiful experiences like boards and bring that element and that component into JIRA. And for us to be able to take a feature as big as boards and then to bring it into a mobile device and to execute on that kind of feature was a really, really big challenge for us, and it took quite a long time. But at the end of the day, at the end result, we are so excited to be able to release these types of things out here in mobile. So I just wanted to kind of, as we start to kind of wind down the talk, and just let you know that one of the things that we're focused on right now is the experience. And we're focused on bringing in more components of board and working on things like Create and Confluence and working on the ability to have a more robust feature, more robust product offering in these mobile platforms via iOS or Android. As you guys saw earlier, we just released JIRA on Android, and we are 100% devoted on that experience and bringing the best possible experience to our customers on those devices. And we're just getting started. We have Confluence on iOS. We have JIRA Cloud on iOS. We now have JIRA on Android. HipChat has been out there for a while. And both of those are equally on Android and iOS. And then we'll soon have Confluence on Android as well. But we're just getting started. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Marc. So we've got some questions from the app that have been upvoted. And the first one, I'm not surprised, is, so at the moment, your mobile experience is only integrated with cloud, or do you support server as well?
So the answer is that we are actively looking and exploring what the server experience will be like on mobile. For the time being, everything is on cloud. And for us to build on cloud and for us to ensure the best experience possible, it's much faster for us to release these new features on cloud. And for us to be able to bring that onto server, we want to make sure that at the time that we do that, we're able to do that in the best use case possible, whether that's going to be native or mobile web, and that we're able to ensure that by the time we have that out, that it is the best experience as possible, meaning we've been able to iterate on it and we've been able to ensure that it's the end-to-end experience.
All right, thank you. And we've got some more questions. So the next one, you kind of touched on it just then when you were talking about it. Did you make any improvements to the mobile browser experience, or did you focus purely on native apps?
So my team, or the mobile team specifically, I think always our hope was that as we build natively and as we execute in mobile, that the learnings would coincide and reflect back into web. I know that the Simplify team and I know that other Confluence teams and JIRA teams have been working very diligently on bringing in a cross-product feel from both web to mobile. So it should be reflected back into the web and mobile web.
Okay, we have another. One of the questions is specifically about the JIRA mobile app. So is the mobile app for admins only? I don't believe it is, but.
No, but I'm not sure that I know the exact answer to that question. I think that it is. It's not admin specific. Yeah.
So I'd say whoever asked that question, maybe go to the product booths. Those guys will definitely be able to answer that question. And that. Okay, so there is a question about macros in Confluence, which I think you should be able to answer. So there's many macros. Like, do all of them work within Confluence Mobile?
No, currently not all of the macros are working. Again, that's going to be something that we'll probably prioritize with data and be able to understand which macros to bring in initially, but currently no.
All right, well, thank you. If there's any more questions from the audience, I can take a few now because we do have a few more minutes. Does anyone have a question that wasn't asked in the app? I can see a hand. I can come to you.
So it sounds like you got a lot of feedback on missing features, which were clearly prioritized outside of the MVP, but you also probably made design trade-offs in that first version. And so you have competing priorities between adding new features that you know need to come after the MVP, but also going back and improving the usability of what you've built based on that feedback. Mm-hmm. How do you guys think about prioritizing those two things against each other?
Well, I think any one of those decisions comes at a conversation with the team. And so the team will then look at what does our roadmap look like? How much time do we have? And in our case, in the first version, we set a date for ourselves. And within that date, we knew that we wanted to have the apps out and released. And we really had to kind of work back and ask ourselves, what can we achieve along that time? And then what can we prioritize after we have that out there, once we've started getting the customer feedback? So it really came down to what is it that we can build within the time frame that's given to us and with the team and the resources that we have. We were a small team operating at that time. And what closes the loop? How can we create a complete experience that satisfies enough of what we're seeing reflected in the web, in mobile? And then how can we set the tone that we know that we're going to want to get to what is desired after that? Does that answer your question? After the MVP. Yeah. At that point, there's a time period where we kind of sit down and assess and look at all the feedback, and that can definitely influence the roadmap and definitely influence the prioritizations. I know a lot of the experiences we would pull up forward just because we started seeing such an increasing demand, and that coincides with how much cadence or frequency you have with user testing or user research, because immediately you'll start out with some type of decision matrix, and you'll see one thing just start coming up over and over and over and over again. And then that's where you kind of start to make the trade-offs of saying, okay, I know we're focusing on this right now, but is that really what we should be doing if we have this opportunity to go and build a better experience?
Hi. How do you reconcile the fact that different PMs are going to want their metrics to still be high, given that there's a shift to the mobile apps away from, say, the existing desktop experience? And like internally, are those debates? Are people complaining? Or is it just, that's okay, it doesn't matter as long as the totals are still 100?
I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Can you elaborate a little bit further?
So users are going to shift to the mobile app.
Correct.
Away from the desktop experience. Do product managers from desktop complain about that? Worry about the fact that their metrics are dropping? I mean, you guys probably have a much more collaborative experience than many companies in that regard, but definitely a concern for some.
Do you want to take this one?
Did you have that debate at all?
No, I mean, for us, so long as you're logged in using our products, we don't really have those debates about are you using it on desktop versus mobile. We want customers to experience Confluence or JIRA no matter what device they're experiencing it on. And so the teams work really collaboratively together. So I work on JIRA Software and Bitbucket. And so for JIRA Software, we're working very closely with our mobile team because we know that if we can create a more engaging experience no matter what device, whether they're on desktop or on mobile, that's good for us as a business and that's good for our customers. And so we don't have that kind of split of a mobile team trying to cannibalize our desktop team. So we're quite fortunate in that regards.
Okay, kind of a slightly different question. How do you encourage or inspire your team to come up with these innovative ideas and even before you prioritize them?
Innovative ideas like solutions, or there's a couple different ways. So culturally within Atlassian, we have something called Ship It, which allows us every quarter to basically hack for 24 hours. And we can all go into a room and we can talk about ideas that we have. They can be themed, or you can have thought about something for quite a time and just said, "Oh man, the next Ship It, I'm definitely going to do that." So a lot of the solutions will surface out of Ship It, where someone can feel very passionate about an experience, and that can then surface in the Ship It scenario, and then it'll resonate and reflect back into the product. There's a couple other formats that we created. One is we have like a mobile appreciation club, and we'll get people to come into the room and volunteer, and we'll ask them just to share about experiences that they like on mobile devices. And it's similar to this format. You plug in your mobile device and you say, "Hey, I'm using Duolingo, and I don't know why, but I love this little parrot guy, and he talks to me the whole time, and it's so easy, and I'm speaking Spanish now, and it's just been awesome." And I think that format and that discussion around the consumer aspect of mobile is why we're seeing these innovation pieces, because I think that as users of mobile, and many of us are in this room, we get a little spoiled on the app or on the service side with really, really great product experiences. And I think that we've become a little bit used to seeing that standard and that level of execution. So I think that equally encourages the innovation. And for the boards, why can't we have, as we flip through the boards, why can't we have it snap into space a little bit? And why can't I drag and drop that issue over and give me some type of delight or some type of wink at the end of that says, "Yeah, like, you did it, great job." All those discussions happen in those types of formats where we're all just getting really excited about executing and building in mobile.
There's also, I'll just add to that as well, we have 20% time at Atlassian, so 20% of your time you can spend working on passion projects. We also plugging a couple of other talks. So in this track, there's a talk by Christina and Mark, 7 Habits of Highly Innovative Teams. So that's be a good one to watch. And also Don Price is talking about Ship It and our playbook and how we encourage innovation within the business. Any other questions? Well, there's one at the back. You're going to make me run.
How valuable was the beta program in designing the UX and experience?
Beta meaning the early release. It's invaluable. Our ability to not only have the distribution to be able to share our product and to ask if people want to sign up and use alpha and beta versions of our product is absolutely invaluable. I think that, as Android got announced today, that's something that's been in alpha and beta for probably about the past couple months, and we've just been able to do a lot of testing. And we have a format that we created, which is called AtLab, and we're able to bring in customers and new users and new teams and allow them to come on premise if need be and sit down with the product in front of them and just test. And that's been another channel that's really been invaluable to us. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. We can give Mark a warm round of applause. And you've got around 30 minutes until the next sessions. The next session in this track is Graham Smith talking about how to build what customers want. So talking about our growth team and how we use beta programs and A/B testing to help validate what we're doing. Thank you all.